Namaskar. I'm Dr. Nalini Avinash Wagmare, working as an associate professor at Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapeeth, Pune. Today's our topic is Chinese historiography. Chinese civilization is one of the oldest civilization of the world, and scholars have been writing history since the pre-Christian era. But the Chinese are very cultural bound people, and they have considered their culture superior. So they did not much interest in maintaining contact with the other nations of the world. Their superiority complex proved to be a hindrance in their historical writing. That is why they could not develop comparative and critical outlook. In fact, Chinese regarded history as one of the five classics and wrote history in the language of common man. According to them, historiography possesses an ethical function, that of the frightening the bad and encouraging the good. Professor Latourette has remarked in marked contrast with the people of India, the Chinese have been historical minded. In Chinese, had great superiority complex and they produce history with a prejudice and mind, impressing upon the world that they knew everything and they had nothing to take from anywhere. So their attitude was not critical and they had also some preconceived notions. Their historical method was not smooth, and also their narration was not as easy as it could be. In the earlier period, Chinese historians produced works about their gods and culture, and later they recorded about their old traditions. With the passage of time, the historians had taken interest in the histories of the old periods and they wrote history in a coherent manner. The rulers now took interest in history writing. The scholars began to touch other aspects as fine art, astronomy, natural science, etc. They also began to write on the biographies, opinion, open doors of outside world for Chinese scholars, and both had influenced each other. It is noteworthy that references of many important material have been in some texts which are not available now. The archaeologists did hard labor in digging a lot of material, but these materials could not be used because of disciplinary difficulties. Features of Chinese historiography during ancient period. So, what type of history writing was in ancient period in China? From the very beginning, Chinese started to write history. They wanted to establish their cultural supremacy, consider the historical writing as one of the most important cultural activities. They wrote history in common language. Earlier, they laid emphasis on the religion and cultural activities. It is said that historiography started with Xu Chen. Then Xu Chen is regarded the father of historiography. He was born in 145 BC and was son of good astrologer. In his childhood, he learned the text of the antiquity. He also undertook wide travels. After his father, he became a court astrologer of Yuti. He produced the Chin Chin, or records of historians. In this work, he utilized his knowledge of antiquity and his travels as sources. This book includes the history of China from earliest times to his own time. In this work, he also deals with the account of significant political events, chronicle tables of battles, useful economic data, biographies of important personality, etc. He also has given important information about these countries which he visited. He highlights the political events as well as economic conditions of the country. One of the important features of his work is that he has provided biographies of the important features of his work is that he has provided biographies of the important personalities of China. This work proved to be a source of inspiration for other historians who pursued his style and method of writing. Historiography before 7th century in China. In fact, after his work, the ancient Chinese legends started to be collected and rearranged in some logical method. The historical events began to be arranged in chronological method, and sometimes exact dates were given to be mentioned in some cases, which later proved to be of for great historical value. This work has great historical value, and a large number of historic works were modeled on the pattern of that work. During ancient time, another type of historiography also developed. Legends, stories, songs, etc. were given importance by historians, and on the basis of them, history was written. But their history writing was based on oral and verbal saying, which had been passed on from one generation to the other. After that, another type of historiography also appeared and known to show tradition, which reduced to writing legends, stories, and anecdotes from oral traditions. In this writing, certain philosophical ideas were also attached with the narrative. In 221 BC, centralized empire emerged in China and historiography faced a change. Now legends and tradition were given less importance. New methods were applied into writing history writings. A good historical material has produced, but much is not available now. Confucius wrote Book of Changes. The Book of History, Spring and Autumn, The Middle Path, Meng Shu were written by his student. Xinqi, the Henshu, the Hanshi, Tungpoya Hanchi were of great historical value. Later, the history of Han Dynasty's period was given much attention. Much stress began to be laid right authentic history and notchings would appear during this period. Xu Wen produced his dictionary and Tang tried to use convenient script. So at the end of the 17th century, the later Han dynasty declined and as a result, centralized empire weakened. Now China came to be divided into a number of states. Each state made an effort to pay attention to history writing. Though a good history writing started, though a good writing was done during this period, but only small records has left in its original form. One of the important contributions of this period was that history began to be considered as an autonomous subject of study. During this period, the rulers as well as individuals took interest in history writing. When Tang dynasty came to rule in China, political unity emerged again. This dynasty remained power about 300 years. It has been regarded glorious age of history. The rulers of this dynasty gave importance to fine arts along with political, economic as well as religious and cultural aspect in history writing. They not only took interest in the compilation of ancient history of China, but also encouraged those who were keen to write national history of the country. A considerable number of schools were devoted to write standard dynastic histories. A Tang established history office for this purpose. These writers were given facilities to travel wide for the collection of research materials, archival materials, and other government materials. Thus, these steps were adopted for writing accurate and authentic history. In this way, the Tang dynasty provided a ground for the historian to produce good historical works by providing the sources. Sung Age and Historiography. After the deterioration of Tang Age, Sung ruled over China. This dynasty ruled over the country for about 300 years, but they were not so powerful as to maintain political unity of the country. But country was actually united and rich. The technique of official historiography in China was developed and redefined. Yuchi produced the Western pilgrimage. So history writing was improved, but much historical value material was not produced. Then Ming Dynasty and historiography. With the rise of the Ming Dynasty, there appeared a new change in Chinese historiography. This dynasty was founded by Zhou Yun Chang and remained from 1368 to 1643 for about 275 years. During this period, that sea adventures had taken place, but the Chinese rulers involved themselves in wars for most of their time. The History Office, which possessed only standard history, came to have variable records of each reign. Shokuno and Hishiyuchi wrote good books. History Office assured that records were not destroyed and their authenticity remained intact. Then what were the main features of Chinese historiography during 17th century? Chinese historiography developed during ancient period. It underwent many changes and learned many new method of history writing. Manchu dynasty occupies an important place in the history of China. Before its emergence, historiography had not been influenced by Western historiography. History offices had been established, and there was an awakening in the field of history writing, both on part of the rulers as well as the individual history writers. There was provided much importance, correct and dependable sources and legends were given less importance in history writing. Now monographs and treatises also began to be written. During this is no attempts were adopted to analyze the documents. The historical writing was limited only to chronological recording and arranging the events. No doubt some individuals tried to make more penetrating historical studies, but their attempts were short lived. Some biographies were also produced, and these were concerned only to an individual. History Office produced government sponsors official histories, and individual scholars produced very valuable historical works. But there was not much differences between individuals' work and government official work because their sources of information were almost at the same. There was only difference in that was freedom of expression. The individual writers were free from certain restrictions to which official historians were subjected. Some of the important historians of these days include Tuyo, Matthew Lin, Liu Owen Oi, Xu Hong, Liu Lin Chi produced Qing Tung, or generalities of history in which the writer not only criticized the method of history writing, but the previous historians, but also suggested as to how history should be written. His work was good example of critical attitude and historical sense. Shumo Kong produced Tsuchi Lung Chin, Comprehensive Mirror for Aid in Government, a history of China from 400 BC to 958 AD. Thus, this work covers a period of about 1300 years. He wrote this work when he was not in power. Then at last there was also need of much development in Chinese historiography. The approach of history writing was not critical. Most of the aspects were left untouched. The rulers took initiative in history writing and much attention was given to art, architecture, culture, religion, etc. Then what were the characteristics of Chinese historiography between 17th to 20th century? In the 17th century, a new change appeared in the field of historiography. The most important Manchu dynasty ruled over this century for about 300 years, 1583 to 1912 AD. With the emergence of Manchu dynasty, China entered into a modern era and the country had to face opium wars as well as typing revolution, which has influenced history writing. During this period, Chinese historians and writers began to come in contact with European scholars. As a result, they came to know that their concept of cultural superiority did not have whole truth. China had been far behind in comparison with the West. At last, China was compelled to open her doors for trade with European powers, and these European traders were helpful in providing material for history writing to Chinese. Then, along with this, European had left deep impact on the approach of history writing. Chinese began to touch the religious aspect of their history writing. On account of religious aspect for their history writing, on the account of Christian arrival missionaries, the historians, the scholars now began to study material which even opposed to ideology of China. In fact, study of such material was not permitted before. Historians now came to be patronized. Research material about China's past history began to be collected. There was given much importance in research of history. The invention of press and paper in China made easy to write and circulate historical works. After a film war, Chinese historiography underwent a remarkable change and attitude of Chinese historians were totally affected. In the 17th century, there appeared a new change under Qiyuan Shu, a new school of historiography developed. The main of this school was to utilize the scholarship for practical purpose of strengthening the nation. This school was founded with the aim that history should not be viewed from theoretical angle, and this school we believed that history should not be produced not only historical purpose, but it should be written with practical aim. The aim of purpose of history writing should be develop sense of unity, patriotism, nationalism in the minds of the people. It also explained that there should be connection between the past and the present. An attempt should be made to develop a sense of unity, nationalism, patriotism in the feelings of the people. This school wanted that old classical accounts should preserve and study with this practical view, and they should be made to develop a pride in the present generation about their past cultural heritage. Then during the 18th century, Coe first made effort to find out the individual incidents and develop a sense of national unity about trends of social and institutional history. But the chief credit goes to Chong Shu Chung, who established new trends in history writing. They gave importance to the collection of maximum material for their work from all possible sources. They laid stress on understanding the meaning of material rather than analyzing them. Thus, a critical approach had been developed. It is time, but at present it is highly admired. He has been regarded as an eminent and original thinker and also compared with Ibn Sina as great philosopher of history. After Opium War, Chinese historiography underwent a basic change in which comparative outlook emerged in history writing. It was due to the impact of West on Chinese scholars. Thus, the historian had learned and compared two civilizations, namely the Eastern and Western civilizations. Then, what was the Chinese historiography during 20th century? After Opium War, Chinese historiography was influenced by Western civilization. In fact, China was compelled to establish its relation with East, and Chinese historians saw the policy of isolation was given up. Now, the Western scholars and historians began to research China's past history and analyze them. They wrote on lifestyle, culture, art, and history of China. A lot of material was discovered and studied. New Chinese historians began to reinterpret China's past and reject the traditional views. New ideas like communalism, democracy, liberalism influenced Chinese, and historians began to write about it. These works were responsible for awakening the people from their lethargy and removing the impression that China was land of opium eaters. Then in 20th century, as a result, new source materials were found out and new interpretations were given to existing historical facts. After the downfall of empire, all old records became available to the scholars. These materials were of great historical value of historians who realized that their study was going on wrong line due to lack of research material. The accounts of Royal Archive were both classified and systematized. Again, the documents of common interest began to publish in series. Now there were great change in Chinese historiography. So instead of provisional history, the stress was given to national history writing. Similarly, art of history writing became wide, and now it was not limited only to the ancient period, but modern period was provided more importance. In addition to this, the historian began to touch new areas like political ideologies, art, literature, civilization, ideas of the Western world. History writing now began to be divided in three ages, namely ancient, medieval, modern, and began to be studied separately. Then what was the present position of historiography? During struggle with Japan and the emergence of communalism, the Chinese historiography received considerable setback. During this period, much historical material was not produced. The outbreak of the World War II put some restriction in the development of historiography. But during the days of communist period, history writing has been given remarkable attention. At present, historiography possesses following features. Historians and scholars of China are publishing large number of research material, supporting their views points and rejecting the old regime because they were based on exploitation. At present, historians are paying much attention on the modern history because communism is being glorified in it. They give much emphasis on the national viewpoint and outlook. So regionalism is not provided any importance in history writing. Imperial age is being totally neglected. Now the historians are busy in producing history with cultural revolution. At last, the scholars historians are trying to wipe out the myth of cultural superiority of the Western culture. According to them, Western culture is not in any way superior to Eastern culture. So these are the reference you can refer for more details. Weak Sheikh Ali book is also there. Hood book is also there. Then East Reader book is also there. I have not mentioned here. But SP Sen book, Histories and Historiography. Then to understand more detail about what is history, E.H. Carr book is also refer for more details. So thank you. Thank you.